whole other level.
I hope so.
I think the best way to describe it now is like almost like being a recruiter, you know, recruiting talent.
You know, my objective walking out of that interview was to ensure that I asked the questions that I know the community wants to hear asked, right?
Wow, that's not the answer I was expecting. You actually got me genuinely laughing right now. Is $1,000 in one card worth more than $1,000 in 20 cards?
Man, that's tough. It depends on what's your play.
What's up, everybody? It's Thursday, and it's Impromptu Thursday. I'm very excited. I can't tell you how much. I have Justin Underwood here, and we're going to just dive right into talking about Marvel cards, Star Wars, comic books, figurines, a whole bunch of stuff. I look at him as a great source in a community to reach out to and talk to about these different collectibles. So without further ado, we're going to bring in Justin.
Hey, FD.
How you doing, bro?
I'm well. It's good to be rolling with you this afternoon.
Hey, bro, it's good to have you, man. It's good to have you. How's your day been today?
It's been really good. I have a pretty demanding job, you know, but it was good. Got through it, and excited to be with you guys and your community and kind of the space of the hobby and getting to know you more and getting to know your community more. It's exciting for me.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's just start off with some high level general questions, so everyone gets to know you a little bit more. What made you start collecting anything at all? Ooh. What age were you? And then what were you collecting when you first started?
So my first collector's memories are going to be around 4th grade, and it's comic books and comic cards really about the same time. Okay. And I was very much drawn to the art and the characters, and you know, the thrill of, you know, ripping the packs as well was part of it, and putting them in binders and sleeving them and re-looking at them and reading them and learning about everything. And then I have a twin brother who some people on my channel have seen, and so it was kind of the one thing we had in common, because we're fraternal, we're night and day. Okay. Think long curly hair, you know, completely looks different than me night and day. And so this was a thing that in our childhood that we actually had in common. And there was one of my best friends was into it. So it really knitted us together, our first little Marvel card community, right, so to speak. And, you know, we had local comic book shops. One was called Cards, Coins, and Collectibles. And we, you know, when we would earn money, that was the thing we wanted to do, was to go buy a $2, $3, $5 pack and a $2 comic book or whatever, right? And that lasted until around 95, 96. And the first thing that happened is the comic book stores started shutting down. And then I mentioned this to you earlier. The second thing that's happened is I found girls. Mm-hmm. And I started.
That was things, right?
It took up all my free time at that point. And met my wife in 1999. I was 15 and she was 14, and she had my attention and my focus and extra time, extra money, all that stuff. Right. And then fast forward to 2000 and probably around 2016, 2017, I began to start having a little extra money at the end of the month. You know, I'm raising 2 teenage daughters, and it took a little while for that to happen. Yes. And this catches my eye, and I'm going to show you. Now, this is a sealed one, but this is a Toy Biz Spider-Man. They call it the McFarlane figure because it has some McFarlane type Spider-Man characteristics, if you're familiar with his artwork, but it's actually probably a J. Scott Campbell rendition. And that figure catches my eye because I picked this one up. I'll show you right here. I picked it up at a yard sale. This guy was selling everything, and along with some other figures. And I just was like, this is what I want to collect. I want to collect Marvel action figures. It's thematic. It connects me to my childhood. I can display them because I like the idea of displaying things. I'm not a put it up in a vault and hide it kind of guy. Understood. And yeah, so if I like it, I want to see it. I don't want to hide it. And it had that element, and there was some element to a little bit of an evaluation type thing. Like you could, buy something less than what it might eventually sell for. And my professional background is real estate appraising. That's what I built, my career off of. And so evaluations, analysis, comps, comparables, these things are really like embedded in my brain.
That's like second language, right?
It is. It really is. And so it had that element to it on a small level that I could afford. We're talking $10 to $30 a figure. If it was expensive, it was 100, 150, not breaking the bank type stuff. And we built a house. And when we built the house, my wife let me have my own space, my own room. And I began to like really express myself in my collection at that point in time. From action figures, and I'd always had comic books, so that wasn't new. My twin brother actually owned a comic book store. Okay. And so there was some connection there. I would pick up stuff. He knew I was into Marvel cards, so when Marvel cards would come in, these are mainly 90s Marvel cards, not the rare, expensive modern stuff.
Yeah.
They would come in. He'd call me. He's like, "Hey, you want to take a look? See if you got this. See if it's in good condition, whatever." And I'd come by and pick them up. And so I was still into Marvel cards in that sense, but not a daily fixation on the hobby. Okay. COVID happens. During the initial stages of COVID, my work demanded a lot from me. We're talking 16-hour days, 6-7 days a week. Okay. And in October, I basically kind of turned a lot of that off. It was like, okay, I'm not giving work that much time anymore. And at that point in time, I decided I wanted to start making YouTube content. And I had some professional ambitions on why I wanted to do that. It was mainly about learning how to brand and be on camera and all this kind of stuff. Yes. So I created this pseudonym that I didn't think would matter to anybody, and no one would be able to find me in my professional world, called Spideyjeu09. And it's just my favorite character, Spider-Man, my initials, Justin Edward Underwood, and my birthday's in September, so 09, right?
There you go.
And I was like, I'm going to do 35 videos and just hide out in this little space and learn how to do it, learn how to edit, learn how to post, learn how to YouTube. I started really enjoying it. Like I actually enjoyed the whole artistic process, creative process for me in creating content. A little community started building around it, which made it even more special. Started connecting with people globally, which was like, yes, I want that in my life.
Yeah.
And in January of 2021, so for card collectors, you guys were already aware of the boom that was going on, but I was not.
Okay.
I was asleep to it, so to speak. And I started seeing it pop up that these 1990 PSA 10 MU cards are selling for a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happened, I got my twin to show up and record a video with me on YouTube, because that's what I was doing. I was making YouTube content. And I was like, hey, get your Marvel cards out of your basement, out of your closet, because they might be worth something. And that's just how that moment occurred to me, right?
Yeah.
We made the video. It was a lot of fun, but that caused me to put my attention and emphasis back on Marvel cards. And somewhat just timing, of how things work out at that same time frame. The 2020 Marvel Masterpiece card set, which is an important set in the Marvel card world. It came out on what we call Upper Deck E-Pack, and I discovered that, and I went like all in and got a lot of cards, and started making content around that. Now I've got modern cards, started doing my research and learning and connecting and growing from there, and it's been in my life, almost every day since then.
That's a very cool story. Yeah. Because I just like when family members are involved. You're talking about you and your brother.
Mm-hmm.
And then the community that you found and started reaching out to, and they were reaching out to you. It's a cool story, man.
Well, the cool part about my brother, I love my brother, and I'd like to focus on him for a second. So he's there with me in the first video, right? And then I got him to break a couple of boxes with me, which he was happy to do. He liked, cards, but he was kind of suspicious of it in the sense of like, I think I'm going to stick with comic books. You know what I mean? Okay. Like this is
what brought
fun.
About the suspicion, you think?
Well, I think he just, if you've been in a comic book store, mm-hmm. there's a good chance that people have walked in with their shoebox full of 1990 Marvel cards, all beat to heck, wanting you to
Yeah.
buy them.
Yep.
And that's just was his experience with Marvel cards. And that was like just the surface layer. He really didn't have these deeper layers of like what's going on in the world and what's available, what's been out there, what's rare, what's special. And so for him, it was just like, yeah, I'll just keep a distance. And that's cool that you have that. That's fun, right? And then he watches me and the hobby kind of together. We just start growing, right? And growing. And I don't know what happened, but January of this year, him along with a couple of other friends of mine locally, like here where I live, it just clicked for them and they jumped in. And now I have like 7 or 8 guys locally that we collect and communicate and talk regularly about Marvel cards. And he's one of them. He's been actively selling comic books to buy Marvel cards. It's been a lot of fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I like that. So when you look for figurines, because I've talked to a few people about, and even like some sports stuff too. But when you look for figurines, what are you looking for?
For
me,
me,
are you looking for the creative look of the figurine, or some kind of other metric you're looking for?
That's a very good question. I'm not an OCD person. I'm not a completist type person. Like if I get one thing, I got to have all of them type thing. And what's up, Sin City? Hey, good to see you
Sin
here.
City's in the house. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but for me, it's brand specific. So Toy Biz morphed into Hasbro. Hasbro bought Toy Biz, however you want to look at it. And so that is a specific line. The second part of that is it's got to be the same scale. So, action figures are scale 3 3/4, 6 inch and 7 inch and, so on, because Marvel sells these licenses, but they do it in inches. So different companies can own a Marvel figurine license, but only for that scale. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
And so Hasbro owns the 6 inch scale. And so my action figure collection is going to be a Hasbro Toy Biz, which is supposed, kind of the same line, and all 6 inch scale.
Very nice. How many different figurines do you have?
Probably 11 to 1,200.
Very nice. Very nice.
Last time if I wouldn't mess up my camera, I'd show you some more, but it's
we're jumping into that later. We may jump into that.
We'll do that. But last I count was around 1,000. And yesterday, if you haven't checked, Hasbro did a huge reveal, and pre-orders went up yesterday for the newest Spider-Man figures. And I don't want to create FOMO for anybody, so don't let this get you all worked up. But there's a particular 2-pack, and I'm gonna show you one here. So like it's not this 2-pack, but this is what a 2-pack looks like. Okay, so it's got Cyclops and Dark Phoenix in it. Very good figures. And this 2-pack is Spider-Man along with Mary Jane's version of this, of being like a Spider-Man they call a Spinneret. And new body mold, all new body mold, toe articulation, which they haven't done since the Toy Biz days, which means you can get it in really, really dynamic poses. And it's on the new pinless joint Spider-Man, where I don't know if I can show you this, but yeah, I won't be able to show you on this one. But basically, on the new stuff, the pins are still a different color. So you'll have a blue leg with red pins or a blue arm with red pins, and it sticks out. Well, the new one, they were able to do all the same color. So it's just going to be really, really, really awesome in my opinion. And the 2-packs tend to get expensive in the future, especially when they have something like that. And so anyhow, just throwing that out there. I went ahead and grabbed mine, and I'm happy to have them pre-ordered.
So the one you showed, the 2-pack, was in a box. Do you keep stuff do you keep some items in the box, some you take out, or?
So I'm an open box collector in terms of what that means for most people. However, there are some figures that I want one open and one closed. And this one here, the reason this is closed is because of who gave it to me. It was a gift. This goes for like $175 now, but I bought both of these loose because they were so expensive. And a friend of mine found out that I didn't actually have all the pieces to it. and or ever have one sealed, because this is, I'm sorry, I'm gonna show it again. It's a Toys R Us exclusive.
Yeah, I saw the Toys R Us symbol. Yeah.
So this was on the shelves about the time that Toys R Us was shutting down, and so they're hard to get, and so he sent it to me, and I'm gonna keep it sealed for that reason.
So now, do you keep a storage unit?
No.
Great stuff.
I have a rule. I have my study in the house, and then we did add this room even after building the house. The study was when I said I got a room and I started, making it my own. We added this room in February of 2021, and basically at that point I said, look, I don't want to be a hoarder. I don't want to have more stuff than I can enjoy. So if it doesn't fit in my study in this room, I can't have it. So I have a limit. So there's no storage building in my future.
And so that's including your cards, your figurines, and your comics.
Anything collectible. That's correct.
Okay. All right. You have a great collection, man. Very, very, very nice. We haven't even gotten in the comic books yet, but I'm already excited about the figurines that you showed me.
Well, thank you. I enjoy them a lot. It's actually, in some ways, I mean, I enjoy all of it, but there's a unique way in which I get to enjoy the action figures, right? When you're messing with a trading card, it's kind of stressful. It's like condition sensitive and all that stuff. And I've even, to some degree, that's gotten to be the case with my comic books. Like, I'm like, is it the right temperature in the room? Is there too much light in here? Is it going to fade them? Your brain just starts kind of going that direction.
Yeah.
With my action figures, I'm like, no, I'm just going to enjoy them. Like, that's just what I'm going to do. I'm going to pose them, stack them, pin them, tie them up, like whatever poses I want to get them in, up in the air, on the ground, somebody on top of them, like fighting, whatever. And so I get to enjoy them in a different way.
What about because I've seen some collectors have the large scale mold statues almost of comic book superheroes. You ever gotten into that?
No, mainly because of space. I think they're amazing. And I think what you're talking about is sideshow collectibles. And they're really awesome, but man, you better have some shelf space.
That's right. And it can weigh a lot. So you better have
strong brackets.
That's right.
You got to hit that stud when you're drilling it into the wall. And I'm not always good at hitting the stud.
So in the market that you're in Louisiana, are there card shows, and do you go to those card shows?
Well, not in the sense of like you can go the same day and come back without really stretching yourself. I'm about 4 hours away from Dallas, so that's that's the card shows that I will head to, but I'm typically having to spend the night or the weekend.
Yeah, I'm starting to think about some stuff out here the same way. There are some places I like to go that's probably at least a one-night trip, and then come back. So let's talk about the Dallas show. How many times have you been? How many times have you been? And what do you think?
Twice. Been twice, and it's the best show I've been to, and probably the one that was comparable to it was the Atlanta show. Just has a totally different energy. I have not been to nationals yet. As you can imagine, last year nationals came on me quick as a collector in the space, so I didn't didn't plan for it. But Dallas, I went last summer, and then I went again this past January. In both cases, I had a really, really good time. It's two totally different experiences, because summer of 2021, I'm walking around with the gold Spider-Man PMG in my backpack in a one touch, and people just like placated to me in terms of like Marvel card talk. They're like, yeah, no, I don't have any, but maybe somebody around here has it. Like it was very scarce and very limited. And this past time in Dallas, I sat at the golden auction table and hung out with Marvel cards. So it's just totally different, just vibe and experience around Marvel cards itself.
Understood. Where is that gold Spidey?
The gold Spidey's in California right now with a set of other PMGs.
That's a great card. So let's talk a little bit about PMGs, right? When did you start jumping into that realm of card collecting? And then we'll talk about a little bit more. But let's start with that.
Absolutely.
Question.
Yeah. So PMGs caught my attention really quick once I got into the modern Marvel card chase. So I mentioned the 2020 Marvel Masterpieces. That was first. And then from there, I start digging into the modern sets and learning about them. And I quickly realized that PMGs were really cool. And at that time, and forgive me, I'm going to get a little ahead of one of your questions. Okay. So
Go
at
ahead.
that time, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. At that time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to collect Spider-Man 2099, Spidey 2099. And I'm going to do that because collecting Spider-Man is probably going to be too expensive and too hard to get good stuff. Like everybody loves Spider-Man. It's going to be all sucked up and expensive.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so because of that, I started like strategically chasing down 2099 cards, like a character collector. Okay. Like somebody might have a favorite sports athlete that they only collect.
Mhm. Yeah.
And man, that was a real chase. That was a real hunt because finding the green Spider-Man PMG and the was actually really hard. I got the so Spider-Man 2099 is only in the 2017 Flare Ultra Spider-Man set. There's a bronze, there's a red, there's a blue, there's a green, and there's a purple, and then there's a gold 1 of 1. Still to this day, no one's ever seen the gold 1 of 1 of the Spider-Man 2099. But I found the purple and I bought it for $600. Now, what you have to remember, at this time that I bought that, I'd never paid $600 for a comic book.
That's it.
And the only reason I was like willing to use that muscle of spending that much money on a Marvel card is because I'd opened up a box of Marvel gems and pulled a card that I sold for $535. And so I bought that card. And so I have the purple and I'm still hunting the green. And eventually I actually found it from Dash Collectibles. You can find him on Instagram. He actually had the card on Upper Decks E-Pack. And I hunted him down, got him to communicate with me. And then we started messaging back and forth and came to a price. I think it was $500 is what I paid for it. So I'm $1,100 into the purple and the green. And I'm into the bronze, red, and blue, probably for, I don't know, $400 or $500, maybe $300, something like that. So I'm into the whole thing for $1,500 at this point for that rainbow, so to speak. And at that point, X-Men Metal is announced. X-Men Metal, and X-Men Metal has PMGs in it, so that had my alert up too. And so I'm starting to really, really pay attention to that market and those cards and this was February and March of last year, 2021.
So now PMG market values have grown. There are several cards that have sold for large amounts.
Mm-hmm.
As the market has matured, because you just told a story about kind of when you were getting involved, some of the cards you were pulling, some of the cards you were selling, and what the dollar amounts were.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear of the large dollar amounts now around PMGs, what do you think?
My mind is blown, to be frank, in the sense of, what it takes for someone to spend that much money on any card, whether it be Marvel, sports, Pokemon, whatever.
True.
And, this has been like really interesting to me. And what I mean by that is to me, it's felt like working out for the first time. Like the first time I went to the gym, like I was like, oh man, everything hurts and I can't lift much. That was me, paying $600 for the purple and $500 for the green. Like that was to me a lot of money, and it was a lot of money in the market at that time, right?
Yes.
But once I used that muscle once, I was like, oh, it wasn't so bad. I withstood that. I didn't take away food from the table, so to speak. And you just start growing. It just starts growing from there in terms of what you're willing to spend and what market you're playing in. Well, at that point, now you float into May, and May, something really interesting happened that the Marvel card community was not ready for. And that's the green Spidey sold for $34,000 on Golden Auction. It's widely known that Steve Aoki bought it. The gold 1 of 1 of 2015 sold for $28,000, and the other one sold for what they sold for. And me including the people who had been in the hobby for some time, thought that, well, that green would probably sell for $10,000 to $13,000. So it tripled that. And that basically caused your core collectors in the hobby to wake up to the fact that, okay, There are people who see a potential in these cards that maybe we didn't inside of the space see. And the market started changing from there.
So now I've done some research and talked to quite a few people about
Mhm.
comic books and Marvel cards or
Mhm.
DC cards in general.
Mhm.
There seems to be, you talk to someone, they either do one or the other. You do both.
Correct.
Why do you think the comic book reader largely does not collect or get into the space of the card realm of collecting?
Well, I can't speak for everybody, obviously. But I can speak to the people that are close to me who, when I say they're into comic books, we're talking about first appearance of Hulk, Thor, Loki, Wolverine, X-Men, #1. We're talking about big time, big collectors, big keys. Okay. Not small times. They're at first they're looking at Marvel cards and going, okay, that's your thing over there, but it's not comic books. Comic books is well established, long history, been here a while.
Yep.
I'm not giving that up.
I mean, goes back well into American history. I mean, way back.
Yeah. Yeah. It has a beautiful long history. You use the word mature market. I think it fits into that space to some degree. And that was not their view of Marvel cards. But here's what changed. Well, I'm gonna show you one of them. Like, first of all, the art.
Yeah, the art. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is a sketch card. This is a 1-of-1 sketch card. So this guy or gal drew this on this card, and it's the only one. The only one that exists. And to the comic book collector, they are attracted to the art. Then, as they began to learn about the sets and how they're built, where the rarity is, and I'm gonna use a word here, the transparency in the rarity. Example, probably one of my favorite books is my Blue Marvel, which is a 9.8. That right now it's believed to have a print run of 17,000. Okay. But if somebody stumbles on a warehouse crate where somebody just stuck them in, a comic book store went out of business at the time that they received those comics, that market's flooded with pristine, never read, minty covers. And what happens from an evaluation standpoint to my comic book? It's just going to drop, right? Where with a lot of Marvel cards, especially the modern ones, and I want to emphasize the word modern. So I'm talking like 2011 on. There's tremendous transparency in what is rare and what isn't.
Lower print run, right? Stated to those in the community, instead of some of the other stuff where you don't know how much was made, right?
The boxes themselves in a lot of cases are numbered. Like, well, there's only 5,000 boxes. But their cards are, most cards, or a lot of inserts, let me say it that way, are numbered. Like this one's numbered to 15. Sorry, the glare is there pretty bad.
Yep.
And so the transparency is on the card, right? And I know that number cards are a thing everywhere, but these are just about every set of modern Marvel cards is well numbered. The Marvel Masterpiece set, the base set is all numbered. Like, you can't get a base card without it being numbered. And so there's just a lot of transparency there. The second part is space. Like, I'm finding myself in my comic books, like I've got to be selling to make space for the new ones that I want. There's not enough room, especially when you start slabbing them. Yeah. They get heavy and get in the way. And I love a slab comic book just as well as anybody. But the third thing I think is diversification, in the sense of, why can't I do both? Why can't, instead of having, these comic books that I really, really love, and these that I really, really like, and these that I'm specking on, why don't I trim that down to what I know has a bright future and I really love, and diversify in something else that I also enjoy, which takes up a lot less space. And it really just has a whole different type of feel in terms of hunt and find and collaborativeness and trading and all that kind of stuff. It's just a whole different feel to it.
Very true. Sin City brings up a good point here. I would love for comics to eventually get to hard numbered comics. Would that be a great day?
That's a smart guy. I agree. So I haven't bought many comic books in the last number of months, but one that I spent quite a bit of money on was when Todd McFarlane, he did his King Spawn issue number 1. He what he did was he said, look, for every store that buys 250 copies of Spawn 1, I'm going to give them a 1 in 250 ratio. So for every 250 of the first issue, first print, you would get one variant called the 1 in 250 ratio. He said, then once we know what the sales are, I'm then going to hand number and sign each one of them. And so
it changes the whole situation.
Yeah. So I bought that book and it's hand numbered and signed. And then he committed with a lot of transparency to destroy any extras. So that's it. And if yours got damaged, he replaced it and then destroyed the one that was damaged. So there's only the amount that he signed and hand numbered. And so that gave me a lot of confidence to say, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and grab that book. I know there's only going to be, I think it ended up being 1,400 or something like that of those books, which was a little more than I thought they were.
Very little number. Very little number.
But in the scheme of things, if the Spawn verse blows up in some way, which it might in the future, right? You never know. That book is going to be looked at as like, hey, we know what's there. There's 1,100 of them. They're all signed. They're all numbered. Yeah, I'll take that one. And I, was able to get it at 9.8.
So you're a like you know a lot about collecting, right? I respect you a lot.
Thank you.
When someone's coming in and they want to start collecting figurines, comic books, or Marvel cards, what would be a process or a way of thinking or a methodology to move along in that space?
Yeah, I'm going to use my own mistakes starting out as, the advice that I would like to give. And it's really one word, and it's focus. In fact, I'll do hyper focus. The people that I have seen amass what I would consider like the most spectacular collections did so with really hyper focus. And how do you get that focus? Well, education is very important. So if you're going to focus on a certain character or a certain set or a certain insert or certain time period, however you develop your focus, you then want to be as educated as you can. And then you want to find some buddies who are also educated and collecting in that space. What happens, or what I've seen happen, and what has happened to me in occasion is like, okay, I've got this focus, and then boom, this other really shiny thing pops up over here. And then you're like, well, I've got to chase that too. And what happens is you don't chase that shiny thing very well, and you don't accomplish what you set out to focus on well either, because we only have so many resources, right? Time, energy, emotion, money. It's a finite amount. It's not an infinite amount. And if you think of it as a drill, right? As a drill, and you're drilling down, the sharper the point of the drill is, the easier and the deeper you can go. If that drill has a fat tip because it's not focused, it's spread out, it's gonna be harder to drill down into what you want to focus on, what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. So I think the concept of what you focus on expands, and the sharper that point, the sharper that focus, the more success you're going to have. So starting out, that's what I would do until you occur to yourself and are pretty aware of the fact that, okay, now I'm an expert in this space, or I have enough knowledge not to hurt myself. Now I might, start looking at some other stuff here.
What I like about what you just said is the community, build some people around you that y'all engage in some kind of dialogue, right?
Yeah.
I love talking to people about cars in general, collecting in general. And how would I say it? Kind of have like a real scrub of information, right? Yeah. And I don't particularly like talking to people that think just like me. Like I want to talk to somebody that may have a completely different opinion. And then we can have a conversation about where are you at, where am I at? And we may never actually agree on anything, but I walk away knowing more from just talking to them.
Yeah. What is the iron sharpens iron, right? I love that. It's been a real blessing for me in the community. And in fact, Marvel cards and I've been really, really fortunate, really, really beyond fortunate with Marvel cards. The moments and memories with the people are the things that I treasure the most.
what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's all about. Nicholas has a question here. He says, "I'd love to hear your thoughts on Star Wars cards, and
Yeah.
do you see the market growing?"
You know, it's one of those things in the sense of it's trading cards as a whole, trading cards globally. So let's start there. As trading cards as a whole grows, these niche markets or niche markets, whichever your favorite way to say it, how could they also not grow if they have a strong brand, you know, really nice cards in terms of, you know, sketches, inserts, numbered cards, one of ones, really strong characters, and a strong community base that already loves the property. And Star Wars is up there. I mean, Star Wars ranks really, really high in terms of, you know, brand value, brand awareness, and the questions is how is the trading card, you know, collectible space going to continue to grow that causes that to grow? In my opinion, you know, there is some concern maybe in terms of like what Star Wars is going to look like into the future that some people have, but that's likely just going to attract a different type of collector, right? And more so than lose the current collector, in my opinion. But I think it has a lot of potential. My concern and what I don't know, this is what I don't know about Star Wars, is how much is Topps printing. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
It feels like a lot comes out, and you know, obviously that's because they believe in the demand. And so I just don't know what that part of the future is, and that's the part that makes me nervous.
Let me ask you a question that I've always had, and that was a great question, Nicholas. The question I've had, like, you know, you like you showed earlier, a one-on-one sketch card.
Mm-hmm.
If I may like the art, but if
Mm-hmm.
I'm a person looking to invest in those cards long term, and the artist is unknown to the general public or even those who may dwell in this space, how does that affect the investment potential of those cards?
Yeah. So what I would tell you about sketch cards, and I will make sure we're really staying in that realm in this conversation. Do not view sketch cards as an investment.
Okay.
Period. Are there rare sketch cards that could be viewed as an investment? The answer is yes, but that's likely another conversation because it would require quite a bit of education.
Yes, yes, sir.
And
I like the way you. I like the way you're answering this because it's.
well,
I agree.
But sketch cards as an investment, I think, is really dangerous. Like I just showed this, and I'm assuming you guys love the art, and there's somebody out there going,
the art.
but somebody out there is going, it's too like anime, and her eyes are too far apart, you know, like, and I wish she was in the Dark Phoenix outfit rather than the Phoenix. Like, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. And it, you know, it's stylistic because art is art, right? And
if you made a card that had the other characters you're talking about, somebody may come along and say, I want to see this.
They may want to see that and love it. And the other part about sketch cards that's interesting, outside of, you know, because some people collect sketch card the characters, sketch card the sets, sketch card the artist, right? That's like right. There's different reasons why people collect them and why some are worth more than others in the sense of more of those collectors chasing in that way. But you don't know the artist. And sketch cards right now, what is happening with Upper Deck, who owns the license for Marvel cards currently, they're generally tapping into unknown artists to help fill these sketch card sets. And you don't know that the next Peach Momoka is going to be one of the top variant cover artists from comic books. But she was doing sketch cards first in Marvel cards. I say first, that's just my awareness. It may have been something else. But she was doing it before she blew up in comic books. You just don't know if that's or when that's going to happen.
Sin City says Joe Jusko sketch cards are amazing.
He's on to something. And Joe Jusko, he's not an artist that people don't know in the sense of like the space. The 1992 Marvel Masterpiece set, which is iconic. It's right up there with 90MU in terms of what it did for Marvel cards in the 90s. It was really the first original art set, meaning they didn't rob art from a comic book and put it on a card. They specifically drew it for that set. And he did it in a stylized way that was almost like fantasy art. Think about it this way. It was, what if Thor was a real man, not drawn in a superhero style, but like real, you know, very specific, correct for the most part, like physical appearance. What would Thor look like? What would Spider-Man look like? What would these female characters look like? And that was the style it was done. It was really popular. They printed 350,000 boxes in 1992 to tell you how popular it was. I don't think we often forget, as quote popular as Marvel cards is becoming right now, it is a thimble compared to how popular it was in the 90s. It's not even close. You can't go to Walmart and get a box of Marvel cards right now. That's changing, and that will happen in the future. We can talk about that if you want to, but it's not true right now. But Joe Jusko is the one who really started that. His art is amazing. It's iconic in the world, and that's why he's pointing that out.
I mean, Sin City is, you know, a knowledge. He's a wealth. And what I really like about him, we met and talked a lot at the Mint and talked a lot about Marvel cards and other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That he puts the work in to do research on stuff. And
well, I can tell by what he said.
Yeah, I admire that in people. So let me ask you a question here that I want to ask. So I want to get your opinion. You'll talk to people, and they'll say, "Hey, you know what? Marvel cards, they're not really. You can collect them if you like the art, maybe the card itself. Maybe you find enjoyment with it, but it's not a collection item. It's not something that's probably going to hold value long term." What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, I would say that's fair in the sense that there's risk. And, you know, in terms of like, hey, we have with sports cards, we have 100 years that we can look at and point to and trend and track and say, you know, why is this card valuable? Why is this one not? What has the market fully decided about this type of card and this type of player? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. Yep.
And with Marvel cards, we don't have that. And so I think it's fair to say that there's risk in that upside potential if you're looking at it as an investment. And so to me, that has me thinking two thoughts. Number one, only buy what you want to keep. Like if you don't have the thought that I want to keep this in my collection, then you're way at risk. You're way at risk. And that's your decision.
On anything you do.
On anything. That's right. You and I are the same there. And that's a personal decision, right? And I don't want to defend the future of Marvel cards because there's just so much at stake in terms of like what's going to change the future for it. Right now, Upper Deck owns the license. Upper Deck is owned in a family trust. I don't know how thoughtful about the future Upper Deck's going to be. I think they will be. And the conversations I've had with them and heard from them, I really think they're going to continue to be, you know, really thoughtful about the future. But they're not in the hands of fanatics who's going to go create the future. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but here's the other part of it. So those are my concerns. When you look at Marvel as a brand and as a property, you and I have nostalgia tied to Marvel.
That's right.
Yep. And so as we feel the pressures and struggles and hardness of life, and we want a reprieve from it, we do this. And I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm speaking for me when I say we.
Mm-hmm.
And my 15-year-old daughter, she beat me to watching Moon Knight on Wednesday.
Yep.
Like beat me to it. I'm like, what? You know, I had to go in another room so she could finish it. And there's a chance that her future in that generation, or this generation to be specific, the future of their nostalgia is going to be tied into Marvel. And think about it. My nostalgia was built off of a comic book shop and a cartoon show.
That's what I had as well. Yep.
Same for you.
Yep.
Marvel Entertainment is everywhere she looks. It's on YouTube. It's on the TV. It's at her friends. It's on TikTok. It's like everywhere she looks. And so it's just going to be deeper and richer in my opinion. And so when her generation is 35 and 40 and they're looking back into their childhood to see what it is they want to touch and have, as the world becomes more digital, there is a chance that they may want to physically hold something. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And so it has the potential. Like if you think of like kinetic energy, like it's there. Do I know if it's gonna actually happen? I don't know. I see Sin City. That guy's so smart. He's talking about X-Men the animated series.
Now you remember this Saturday mornings was on. It was on, man.
Previously on X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in your neck of the woods last week, I was actually having lunch with the creators of X-Men the animated series from our childhood, and they've been contracted to work on the new X-Men 97 that's coming out next year. Disney's all in with X-Men. They're going to do the cartoon. They're going to do it. They're attempting to do it correct. And what it's going to actually be, I don't know. And what I mean by correct, this is again for me, not for you, is that they're going to honor the original theme. Like, X-Men, the anime series, kind of adult theme. The first episode, Morph died on a cartoon. Mm-hmm. Like that's about as adult as it gets on.
That's the realm of Marvel, though. Marvel gave you kind of adult content and scaped it into a comic book, but that's why it touches masses of people, because it's not about, DC sometimes made it just about a certain character doing a certain thing and limited the scope of that character. Marvel never did that. They
didn't. And X-Men, just to focus on that a little more, I mean, just about anybody in the world could watch that show and see themselves somewhere on the screen. Mm-hmm. A tremendous diversity.
And that's what Stan Lee wanted. Mm-hmm. Everybody should be touched by the X-Men.
Totally agree. And I think Disney understands that. And so along with they understand a lot of different things, and they get a lot of things wrong too. So I'm not here to worship Disney by any stretch of the imagination. But my point is the content's going to continue into the future. The brand, I think, is going to continue to grow, and there's a lot there for them to draw on. They're still just tapping into, right? Character wise, story wise, and all this kind of stuff. So my point is, where not as many people may be into baseball now as compared to that. Like, what was it yesterday? And in 24 hours, 209 million people watched the Thor trailer.
Yeah, that trailer blew up.
Or 209 million views, not 209 million people, but 209 million views. So it blew up, right? And I think we're going to see those kind of records continue. And so if trading card as a hobby starts taking more people's attention as a collectible or something to enjoy, or even an investment, I think they're going to want to go to that thing they know and understand and have a connection to, because that's where your confidence lies. I remember when I was in Atlanta and I was actually working at my table, somebody walked up with a Harry Potter card. I've read all 9 books and I've watched every movie. Mm-hmm. So I know the property, right? In that sense, but I don't know the cards. And my oldest daughter likes Harry Potter, and they slid this card and they were like $200 or something like that. And I remember immediately my anxiety kind of picked up, and I went, I have no idea if this card's worth $200. I literally know nothing other than it's in a slab and I know the character. And so as people, as the hobby grows and people come to the hobby, they're going to want to move towards that thing that they know and understand more often. And so I think I think Marvel has a bright future.
So Ernest has a question here. I really appreciate your response to that question. Really appreciate it. Ernest has a question here. What's your take on DC versus Marvel?
So is that a type of card set, or in terms of the properties, DC versus
I'm gonna interpret that in terms of the properties.
Yeah. So this is interesting because DC owns all of its movie rights that I understand. Okay.
That I understand as well.
So they have more control in that sense, where when Marvel went bankrupt in 1996, which is part of the reason the Marvel card hobby went into hiding.
Yeah.
They sold off the movie rights to Sony for Spider-Man. They sold off the X-Men and Fantastic Four to Fox, and they held on to the Avengers and things like that, which they eventually sold to Disney, right? When Disney bought all of Marvel, they acquired it. And so that's a little more scattered, but they've just done such an incredible job in terms of story building and world building and creating content that was humorous. At the same time, you felt the weight of the how would I say this? The danger like what Thanos could do, right? Like kind of thing. Where with DC, you have these. I mean, I would actually argue as a Spider-Man fan, it's Superman, Batman, then Spider-Man in terms of historical popularity and importance.
Sure.
But Superman, as he really is not relatable at all.
He doesn't really have, to me, when you go
Mhm.
into a character, do they have a weakness that you can relate to? Is there something impacting their life
Yeah.
that you can reach and touch and be like, you know what, I can relate to that. That's
You can
happened to
relate.
me, or that's happened to this person.
Mhm.
Superman, his weaknesses are almost far-fetched.
They are, in fact, and when they try to make him more human, they actually have to move away from the character and the lore to do it. Like Superman would never kill or hurt anybody, you know, and these kind of things. So, but he's not relatable. And if they try to make him relatable, he moves away from being, I think, from being authentic to who the character really is. So that's the real struggle. The second part with Batman, I mean, I love Batman. All right, over here, I've got a whole section of Batman figures. I actually have something I'm gonna show you.
Can't wait to see this.
So this is a Batman figurine, and see how it says gold label?
Yes.
And then here, see how it says
McFarlane?
McFarlane, sign card included.
Mm-hmm.
So back here, you can't really see it. There's a trading card back there signed by Todd McFarlane, on card auto. This was a limited edition to Target. And I can't wait to open this and get that card graded.
Oh, yeah.
So as big of a Marvel guy that I am, I really, really enjoy Batman. And, you know, they just keep reinventing them, you know, and doing this thing because it's a money thing. And I just wonder or wish they could have, you know, that 10, 11-year story arc like they did with Iron Man. I mean, I think if they did that, and I get they kind of did that with the Dark Knight. So I granted,
attempted to.
But they didn't world build around it. That was all in one space.
Mm-hmm.
And that did really well. I still think the Dark Knight movies, some of them are some of the best movies ever made and should be considered in like top 100 movies of all time. For sure. But in terms of like world building, Marvel just has it down to a science, and they're continuing to do it. And even with the complexities of multiverses and bringing in other properties like from Sony and Fox, like they've got it figured out, and we'll see if DC figures that out. I don't know if they will. I did enjoy the most recent Batman. I in terms of like just enjoying a movie, but I don't know if it was universally praised.
Yeah. Adrian has a statement here. Zero Cool printing cards of Disney cartoons should have been offered instead of the V Friends garbage set. What do you think of free Zero Cool?
I don't know anything about them.
Okay.
It's hard to have a thought of something I don't know.
You're not by yourself on that. I've talked to some people. Say the same thing.
Is it a physical card or
it's a physical card? It's a physical card. It started with Gary V. You're familiar with Gary V?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Started with Gary V creating art. That art being placed on the card. The cards are numbered. Some cards are numbered. He signed some cards, and it was I think there were 2,100 boxes made. So many went out into population. So many were kept back. They started out selling for around $2,000, $2,100 a box.
Oh wow!
That price went up. That price came down a little bit. But when it launched, several people in the sport car space that I talked to felt like the product was somewhat as an insult to someone who takes cars seriously. Either you like it because you like the way the car looks, or you want to invest or collect something. They wanted to see another product offer. So I think that's what Adrian's getting at.
So I don't know about cool printing cards, and things have a way of changing. So I'm gonna make a statement here with the reality that the world's constantly changing. But in real estate, if I was wanting to invest in a piece of property, I can invest in a brand new house in a brand new subdivision with no trees, or I can invest in a house in a mature subdivision with mature trees. And I'm pointing out trees because it has a way of letting you know it's a mature neighborhood immediately, because they had to grow, right? And it takes time for it to grow and develop around it. The new subdivision may be the hottest thing out there, but the problem is you actually can't trend the data of that subdivision through economic up and downs. And they put up a new street or a new highway, where the mature neighborhoods that have been there a while, you can. And so if you're like thinking of things like as an investment long term, if you're adverse to risk, you want to be in that mature area where you can really trend and know it. If not, you're going to be in this real risky space that may pay off and it may not, and often doesn't, right? And so anytime new stuff comes out, you just got to be really careful and don't over hedge into one thing and try to make it all up. And that's for Marvel cards as well, for whatever.
I agree with that. That's for anything that you're thinking about. I make comparisons all the time talking to people about real estate and other things when it comes to collectibles. I love that.
Well, I mean, real estate's been around us for a long time, so it's an easy analogy.
Right? That's right. So let's jump in the world of comics, right?
Yeah.
What comics do you collect? What are you looking for when you're thinking about adding a new comic to your collection?
Yeah, so it's a couple of things. Well, one thing I would tell you is if I'm buying because I want to own it, I want it in my collection, and I'm concerned about what that price is going to be in the future. I mean, it's going to get really expensive. I'm looking 5-6 years out on the Disney movie timeline.
Okay.
So the most recent example I can give you is the Silver Surfer run. I went ahead and chased the run of when Silver Surfer came out as in his first appearances, it was in Fantastic Four, issue 48, 49, and 50. Or 49, 48, 49, and 50. 3-issue miniseries. What's interesting is that 3 issues was written as a movie script. Stan Lee and them, when they wrote it, they were doing it as if it was going to be a movie one day. So it's really fascinating. And you have the first appearance of Galactus, first appearance of Silver Surfer. And I went ahead and grabbed those and the grades that I wanted. And then I started chasing the issues 1 through 18, which is Silver Surfer's first full title issue run, which I think has incredible cover art, and cover art's important to me as a comic book collector. And I went ahead and finished those out. And so that's what I'm doing in terms of like a collecting space is like, hey, what do I need to go ahead and grab before it captures the rest of the world's attention and starts getting bought up?
So when you grade, are you pressing comics, cleaning comics, or okay? Because I know there are some graders that send in the comics the way they are.
For sure, and I have sent a few in the way they were just because of not wanting to be delayed in getting it. But those were mainly like somewhat spec books that I wanted to flip, kind of thing. But I have a real good friend named Daniel Dunn who owns Valor Comics. He's got a YouTube channel, Instagram. He lives here locally. He does a Valor Comics. He does a fantastic job. And he does all my pressing, cleaning, and grading. And if you could see the 9.8s back there, you would know that he had his hand on those.
Oh, I'm seeing him. Yeah, I see him up there.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, are there certain grades? Because I talked to different comic book collectors. Are there certain grades that you look for more with, compared to certain years of the comic? Or what's the decision-making process that you go through?
Well, for me, if it's a modern book, it needs to be a 9.8. Unless there's something else going around it. I want to be really careful with variants. That means, it's not the first print cover, it's a variant. If the variant isn't attached to a first appearance or a major comic book storyline event, variants make me nervous for long-term potential, regardless of print run and rarity for that matter. Okay. In your older comic books, and I'm not going to get into, Silver Age, Bronze Age, and those things. But if I'm buying an older, more expensive comic book, I don't mind it in a 4.0. That's kind of a number that I've settled on, just in terms of like being consistent in grades across the board in that area for the most part. But at the same time, I would tell you I have a first appearance of Punisher, which is AMS 129, Amazing Spider-Man number 129. It's in a 7.0, and I couldn't be happier. because
that's a great grade.
yeah, even though it's a 7.0, it does what I want for the book, which is it presents really, really well. So that's the other thing that I would say. In the card world, we say buy the card, not the grade, right? In the comic book world, if you're wanting it as art, like you see back here on the wall, you're really looking at presentation as well. But for me, on the more expensive older books, around a 4.0, the No Man's Land 5.60, because you don't see them appreciate as much from what I understand. I haven't actually studied that data, but from what I understand, from like in terms of how much a 4.0 may eventually jump up. And otherwise you got to be in your higher end grades. I think across the board in the future, you're going to see your more rare high end stuff actually have the most appreciation long term. And I think we're seeing that across the board in all hobbies.
I can see that. For those who may not know, I don't know. There just we talk about population in cards, there's circulation in comic books. When you get something graded, people know how much is out there. So when we start talking about appreciating over time with higher grades, there's a lot less out there that's at a higher grade.
Well, we know. To give you an example.
Go ahead.
Well, like I have the first appearance of Spider-Gwen, which is Edge of Spider-Verse #2. That's a great book. Yep. But I have the Greg Land variant, which is the 1 in 15 variant. And I think there's like, last check, there's like 100 and something 9.8s. Which, the comic book market is a lot bigger than the Marvel card market. But I actually spent more money on my green Spider-Gwen PMG. I paid $9,000 for it.
Okay.
And I paid $6,400 for the first appearance of her in a comic book. And mainly because of the fact that that green Spider-Gwen PMG, that was like only the third one I'd ever seen out of the 10. So I don't even know where the other 7 are. And that was it. Like I knew my chance to get that card again was going to be really, really limited as compared to the Greg Land. In fact, I think at the time that I bought that card, there was like 2 or 3 of the Greg Lands on eBay I could go buy, And so it's different markets, obviously, but there is a bit more transparency and rarity in the Marvel cards.
Do you find that as you travel throughout the country, there are different markets that kind of really get into Marvel card or DC card collecting or buying or purchasing than other markets?
I think so. And I think it might be the fact of the community that may be there locally. But I also would say that's true. It's actually true on a global sense. There's a strong Marvel card community in Canada.
I've heard this.
Australia, and a lot of the arts coming out of the Philippines. There is a strong Asian market, but I can't really pinpoint exactly. That's saying Asian market's a big market, right? But I can't really pinpoint it quite like the others. And so a friend of mine just went to the card show in Canada, and he said Marvel cards was a strong topic throughout the whole show, more so
have you ever been to the Toronto show?
No, that would be awesome.
I've heard Marvel cards are, well represented.
When I buy off eBay, I'm never surprised when it's coming from Canada. It's all the time.
So Nikki, I have a friend here, Nikki and Jason. They have a question.
Hey, Nikki.
What's up, Nikki? Can you explain the difference between off-white versus white page when it's the same grade?
Yeah. So this is funny. When I started collecting comic books, I could care less. I was just only focused on the grade. But as you kind of get deeper into the hobby, you start creating reasons why one's better than the other, right? And we see this in the card space as well. Like both can be a PSA 10, but you look in there and one of them's really not true centered. The other one's 60-40 and they have that variance, right?
And I've been learning more about like Beckett grading, subgrades mean a lot.
Well, I've got 200 cards at Beckett right now. I'm excited. I'm curious to see how this experience is going to go. I've graded with Beckett before, but it just seems to me those subgrades are going to maybe be more important in the future. I could be wrong, but
I think the same thing. We both could be wrong, but I think the same thing.
Yeah. But in terms of white to off-white, I think there's a sense that if a comic book is white pages, it's been preserved better than the discoloration that occurs over time with the off-white. And it seems to me that that view is held throughout whatever age comic book it is, because there are white pages of 1940s books that, if they were specifically and carefully cared for, and therefore a white pager will get, you know, a higher premium, so to speak, in terms of what the market would pay for it.
So let me ask you this, right? We get in the comics. We talked a
Mhm.
little bit about how to store your comics, what temperature, light, things of that
Mhm.
nature. Let's dive deeper into that, because it is important. Like, even after
Mhm.
you grade a comic, there is still a condition sensitive
Yeah.
kind of scenario you need to have your comics in. Can you speak to that?
Right. To some degree, maybe not at a scientific level, but just simply stated, temperature is, as temperatures go up and down drastically, it causes things to expand and contract, to move, so to speak. And so, you know, these things are slab, but they're not like always fully pressed where there's no chance for movement, and they still will move. Like, nature's forceful, right? And then with light, particular light, it'll fade out the comic book over time. And so the way in which you store them is important. That's why you will see a lot of people that have rare special books that they only store them in the dark in you know, some type of file or shelf or whatever, to keep it out of the light, to keep it special. And that's even with artificial light. You got to be careful with. I don't know which is worse, you know, whether it be LED light or soft light or that kind of stuff. But I imagine a quick Google search may give you that answer. CBCS and CGC have made improvements on their slabs over time to make them more resistant in terms of like UV resistant. And so they're steadily, I think, aiming to improve that to protect the books.
Do you see different market values for graded comics with those two major grading
Absolutely.
companies?
Yeah. So I would, and just a quick comparison for our sports card or trading card friends, CGC is the PSA of comic books.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is they just routinely sell at a higher price for the same value. Where CBCS, which is owned by Beckett, Beckett owns CBCS. They're just not quite getting the same values for the same grade, or same price for the same grade.
Is there information out there? You know, people talk about cracking slabs and taking a BDS to a PSA. Have you seen evidence of, if you open up a comic, grade about
I mean,
once?
yeah, I think with like you know, SGC to PSA and so forth and so on, like there was a belief that at one time, and it may still be true, but at one time, if CGC was grading harsher than PSA, well, there are occurrences now where it appears that PSA now may be grading hard, but who knows? Because these are individual humans that are doing this at some point.
Yes.
But with CGC and CBCS, there's a view in what you would call the head graders. And it's a really actually small community, as I understand it, of these people that are really highly respected and kind of lay out the rules for grading and for particular books and errors and things of that nature. And CBCS has maybe the most respected for your long-term collectors, unless something's changed since 2000, because that's the last time I actually had this information, was 2020. That's what I meant to say, not 2020. And where CGC, their head graders maybe were not as viewed as strong as the CBCS. But even though that belief is like underlining with the experts, the market still chooses CGC for the same grade.
Have you traveled to like a Comic-Con at all?
Not any one that's like significantly on the map, like San Diego.
Okay. I've only been on one small one. I always wonder, like, what is the comic space or the Marvel card space at these events?
I would say since the 90s, the Marvel card space would be almost nothing, although Upper Deck will be there, and they have been there. But COVID hit in 2020, and Marvel cards was, I mean, to be frank, there's like 2,000 to 3,000 people in the world collecting Marvel cards before January of, before the MU Marvel Universe, 1990 Impel Marvel Universe boom. There was just not many at all.
What do you see these markets going? If you were looking at crystal ball and you were looking at the future,
Mhm.
Where do you see these markets going in the future?
Okay. All right. You going to be with me in this for a minute?
Yeah, I just want to get your opinion.
Okay. So this is an interesting response that you're going to get, in the sense of I could just say, well, I think it's going to be good. Like, I could just do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you go back to 2020 and COVID hits, in the United States, the feds basically print double the amount of money, and they flood it into the marketplace. Okay. And they gave it to everyday men and women for the most part. And the everyday men and women took that money and bought stuff. So where'd the money ultimately go? It went to the corporations and the high ups and the people who are already wealthy ultimately, right? But it helped us get what we need for whatever, right? So all of a sudden, all these companies were flush with cash. The markets were up and people were making money. And wealthy people don't just stick money into the bank. Like when I have extra money, it goes into the bank, not wealthy people. When they have extra money, it goes into something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of those started buying sports cards and collectibles like literally collectibles across, all properties were doing really, really well. And Marvel cards wasn't really on the scene at that time. But eventually by 2021, it was.
Well, even in 2020, you saw a spike in comic books.
Oh, yeah,
right?
man.
If
you bought a comic book in 2020, you're hoping that it's still worth that today. Like,
that's right.
That's expensive.
Right. Yep.
And so Marvel cards saw an influx of that money. When I mean that money, I mean the big money, the wealthy money, saw an influx of that primarily around May of last year. And that escalated all the way into, well, really, really last month. Okay. And so the question for me becomes a couple of different things. Not to get into economics here, because I'm not an economist, but I do have to live in the headlines because it affects my job.
Yes, sir.
So what I would say is, like, the other thing that increased over this time is inflation, meaning the cost of going to the grocery store is significantly more expensive. And, you're like, wow, I never thought I'd make $100,000, but I still feel like I make 60, or whatever that scale is for you, where you live and where you work. And but yet the economy is still booming. Why does this matter? Well, I actually think we're headed towards a recession. And I think we're headed towards a recession for a couple of different reasons. Number one reason being inflation. The feds have not been able to get their heads wrapped around how to slow down this economy. We had over 7% inflation last month. The goal was 2%. The goal was 2%, and it tripled that and then some. And they've been raising interest rates. And if you're paying attention, in January, the mortgage rate, I'll use the mortgage rate, not the Fed rate, because that's something different, but the mortgage rate was around 3.25. And today it's around 5.25, 5.5. It may be 6.25 by the end of the year, and it's still not slowing down the economy. So a global recession will likely be in order at some point to do that. Now, don't be afraid of recessions. Okay. I know that's a negative word to some people, but think of it as pruning. Like, if you didn't prune your garden, it wouldn't be healthy. It would be overran. It would have unhealthy growth that wouldn't produce fruit. So pruning has a way of getting rid of the unhealthiness so that the roots get deeper and richer, and that the buds and the fruit produce more. And that's what a recession can do for an economy.
And there's a theory that there's a cycle to recessions.
Yeah. So recessions typically happen around every 9 years. Right. We blew that out of the water last time. Right now we're at record low unemployment, which you're like, yes, record low unemployment. Well, guess what follows record low unemployment? Recessions, because you peak and then you drop, right? And so when you say future of stuff, I actually think there's going to be, if you're smart, possibly some sort of a decline here in the immediate future. If the recession has an impact on the hobby, which, if you're a Warren Buffett type, you buy when people sell. and you sell when people buy.
You buy hard when people sell.
Yeah. And so if you could get yourself in that cycle in a healthy way, it could be a right opportunity for you. And maybe it won't be. I don't know. I know that there's some particular cards I'm looking for that if they pop up at the right price, I'm going to be on them. You know, I already have it in my mind. Right. But long term, this is what I would say. Long term, the ability to track data is going to continue to have a major impact on the hobby. When you think of the elements of value, and there's quite a few of them, especially in the definition of fair market value, but confidence is one of them. When someone has confidence, they're willing to pay for something, and they're maybe willing to pay more for something. Well, data and transparency has a way of creating that. So when I can pull up a card and go, okay, what's the data on this one? How many are there out there, and what have they been selling for? What's the trend lines? It has a way of creating confidence. And as that builds and the data is available, I have a curiosity around the fact that, well, maybe people will start seeing collectibles as more of an asset because you can actually interpret the market and understand it. And to some degree, you can't predict the future, but to some degree, it becomes a little more predictable. And if that continues to happen, I do think that you may see this stuff become, more of an investment from a collectible standpoint. Maybe it never happens. I don't know. But I think the ability to track the information and the data is going to be useful to it. And you definitely see that being the investment from Fanatics, from eBay, across the board, COMC, they're all focusing in on the data and giving you the ability to see it and have it in your hand at real time.
That's right. What data do you use to determine values? Are you using eBay or using something else? So
if we're talking specifically about Marvel cards, I will use eBay, but I will tell you, for me, and I'm fortunate in this regard, I am connected well enough that the people in the hobby are really my biggest source. And that's important to me because of the fact that the explosion of Marvel cards was so fast, so quick that it was really dangerous in a sense.
Yeah.
And so I actually had to rely on some people in my life in a really strong way to say, okay, Justin, I know what the data is saying today, and I know where the points are today. But what should you do? And I'll give you an example. So I told you I chased down those 2099 Spider-Man PMGs. That was $1,500 into them. I sold them for $30,000 and a blue Spider-Man PMG in return, a blue Miles Spider-Man PMG in return. You might have looked at the data at the time. In fact, you would have looked at the data at the time and said, oh, wait, the purple alone might be worth $30,000 soon. Right. And you, at one point in time, you might be right. And you might be right today for that. Okay. But for me, I was like, to some degree, if I want to stay in this hobby for a long time, I want to stay up. Obviously, I've spent a lot of money. You can see that in the background, right? I want to stay up in the hobby. And to do that, I view it as a moral obligation to sell when I have that much of a profit on the line. Okay. Unless it's something that's really, really special to me that I just, it's got to stay with me. For me, you gotta be willing to pull that lever and make that sell happen. And you know what? That put me into my next card. So
I was about to say, because you're pulling that, that's a strategy here. So you're pulling that lever. Take us to the next step.
Yeah. So the next step is actually quite fascinating for me. So the next step is, okay, so I sold that card here. I'm using my connections, and what I mean by that is relationships of people who have a high understanding of this hobby, and my experience and some of my own tuition to come and buy the cards that are down here and go ahead and get that I think have a strong position into the future. And it may not be up to 30, but I might could take that 30,000 and buy, say, 12 cards or 15 cards that are going to go up that might actually net me 40 You see what I'm saying?
But you're also mitigating risk as well, because you're diversifying into more cards.
I'm diversifying into more cards, and I'm not trying to do it alone in terms of my, and I may miss, right? I may miss my green Spider Gwen may never sell for more than 9,000. Like, but I don't have an intention to sell that right now, but you know, that's always there. The, another strategy, and this one's the risky one that I don't advise anybody to do, but this is, I do have a maverick personality. I'll go ahead and confess. If you tell me have to do it this way, I'll do it the other way.
I'm the same way.
You're the same way? Okay, good. You're your own man.
Anybody that knows me knows that I'm that way.
I got FD the Maverick. I love it. I'm Justin. I'm Spideyjeu the Maverick. So I actually have, with the sales that I made, I actually have the cards that I bought and acquired. They're going into a particular place, and they'll eventually get listed for sale. They're being graded right now. And Spider-Man Metal's coming out. So you had X-Men Metal, like I showed you, you know, these cards here. I didn't show you these. So these are sketch cards from X-Men Metal. Know where your camera's at, Justin.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you saw this one. That's X-Men Metal. Well, they're coming out with Spider-Man Metal. And I actually think, now I'm biased to Spider-Man, as you all know, so take this with a grain of salt. But I think the way that set's built, the way it was built, that set was born like in the minds of Upper Deck before the Marvel card boom. Okay. So the print run, I think they've adjusted, but they haven't adjusted to probably what it needs to be. We're probably talking 45,000 boxes where 36,000 were printed for X-Men Metal. And the X-Men Metal seal product right now is going for $1,000 a box, which is nuts. Okay. Mm-hmm. This set is going to be special. And in my opinion, and don't get all hyped and start going crazy, but that's just my opinion. And so I am positioning myself to take these cards that I bought that I'm like 6,000 into total. Maybe another set that I'm into for 5,000. And I actually think I can move them and have enough money to buy 45,000 worth of Spider-Man Metal, right?
Okay.
Now, what you have to remember, and this is to me the cool part, is that 45,000, you know, if things work out and they may not, the actual dollars that came out of my pocket originally was 1,500.
That's a power move. That's a power move.
And 45,000 of the product of Spider-Man Metal, because, you know, if I'm fortunate enough to be able to do this, I'm going to be buying cases. So the odds of case hits, it's going to be around 10 to 13 cases, something like that. And about 37% of that product is going to be PMGs. And I don't know if you've heard, but Upper Deck hired the original Arena Designs who created the 1997 NBA PMGs to do these PMGs. So you're going to have that really nice red and green foiling.
Oh, yeah.
Corner to corner without the gray border. It's going to me, you know, who knows? It may look like crap. I don't know, but because we haven't seen it yet. But I'm preparing myself to be in a position to really leverage that set. And who knows? I guarantee you one thing, I'm going to have fun doing it.
Yes, you are.
That's the guarantee. And if I just end up with all the cards and I'm out my original investment, then yeah, that's fine.
But everything you just went through though is a culmination of patience, time, knowledge, being a part of your community, talking about things, leveraging that to move up, and then thinking about where else do I want to go,
and being willing to let go.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means for me is, look, I made a lot of money, so I don't want to say not being greedy, okay, because that was a lot of money. What I mean is not cheating Justin today in a hope that I might get more tomorrow.
That's right.
And being okay with the fact that the person who bought those cards actually will likely make a lot of money. And what I like about that, and this is an analogy I like to use, a sheep, like if I'm a sheep, you can shear me over and over again, but you can only skin me once. So if I try to take somebody for the max amount of money possible and put a lot of risk in their court, I actually don't give them the opportunity to come back to me over and over again to buy, or vice versa. If I'm trying to buy and I'm trying to cut them to get something cheap, then I actually possibly lose an opportunity to go to buy from them again in the future. So let's just shear me over and over again. Like that's what I'm okay with. And I have a rule. I sell something every week. Every week I sell something. And for me, that keeps me personally honest and keeps me moving stuff to keep money flowing, because at the end of the day, you got to have cash flow. That's the breath of life in this hobby, in my opinion, unless you have like a really amazing job and all that kind of stuff. Right. So with that being said, it's, to me, selling something every week keeps me honest and keeps my collection, fresh. That makes sense.
I like that. You shared a lot of gems right there, telling that story, walking people through that. A lot of information there, and it's a mature approach. It's a next level kind of thing. Right now, I spend my time building a foundation of cards. Right, you're talking about what I would like to do a couple of years from now.
You're on it, man. You're building a community too. That's what I love.
Yeah, well, to me, that's what it's all about, Justin. And I always wanted to have an outlet where I could talk to everybody about anything that they're collecting. Mm-hmm. I'm talking to you today. You have great knowledge. I respect what you're talking about. I want to get on with you because it's for the community, and we all can learn something, and we all can share. It doesn't matter who I talk to. I don't understand. I'm just going to say this, right? I don't understand why people I'm only sports cars. Everything else that somebody is doing, they shouldn't even be doing it. Why are they doing that? And then questioning those people about why they're doing it. Oh, I'm only Marvel. And I don't understand why that person's doing that. Oh, I'm only autographs. I only collect autographs. I only get them in person. Since I started collecting as a young kid, I've met all different types of people trying to do different things. And I want all of us to realize that there's similarity in everything that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Similarity. You're talking about PMGs. I may be talking about Steph Curry. At the end of the day, the knowledge that we're talking about, the level of understanding when it comes to collecting and moving around in the community is the exact same. And I think the more and more people understand that, the better overall hobby will be.
And if you would like for me to respond to that,
go ahead, sir.
What I would say is, as I have no capacity to stop that guy or gal from saying those things. What I do have control over, or capacity for, is to welcome them into the community of Marvel cards, if that's what my focus is. Yep. And one of the ways I did that last year is, I don't know if you saw my Instagram page, but I had a very top flight artist do an homage to Michael Jordan's rookie card and Michael Jordan's Jumpman Jordan image, where I had Spider-Man painted as Michael Jordan dunking the basketball as like the rookie card, and I had Miles Morales in the Jumpman Jordan. And I posted those and said, hey, I want you to know you're welcome into Marvel cards. Like, I'm happy that you sports guys and gals are coming into the hobby and doing it your way, like the way you want to do it, whether that's flipping or investing or whatever that is. That's okay for me. Like, I have nothing around it. That's for you. And I want you to know that you're welcome. And for the people who have this kind of position of judgment and are saying, well, you shouldn't do that because Marvel cards is this, or you shouldn't do that because sports cards is this. Like, I'm just going to give them space to be there. And maybe it changes for them. Maybe it doesn't. And that's okay. I just want them to know that when they're ready, if they ever are, there's a welcome out here that says, come on in. Right. Can be a part of what we're doing, and hopefully to be a benefit for the community as a whole.
Well, Justin, just watching your stuff, man, I already knew that. So that's why I respect you.
Man, I appreciate that.
And like everyone that I talk to, and definitely you, there's gonna be more conversations in the future about how markets evolve, things happen. I want to come to the people who are very knowledgeable about what's happening, and then talking to them and showing there's a dialogue, right? This is the South Side of Chicago in LA talking to Louisiana right now.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, I lived in Elgin, Illinois for a year. Do you know that?
You live where, sir?
Elgin, Illinois for 1 year.
Oh, I know Elgin. Yeah, I know Elgin very well.
Yeah. My dad was actually born there.
What was life in Elgin? What was that like?
Oh, wow. So I was 4. It was the first time I ever saw a river frozen. That was an experience. And we rented this 2-story house, which also was an experience because I grew up in mobile homes down here in the South originally. Mm-hmm. And I remember because it doesn't snow down here much. And I remember waking up one morning, it snowed. So me and my siblings, I had four of us at the time. We go out the front door, and it's one of those doors that you can open, but it's actually locked. You know what I'm talking about? And we go outside, and we're in the snow, like in our pajamas, and we'd go back in when we get cold, and the door's locked, and our parents are asleep in the upstairs, and we're like trying to make snowballs and throw it to get them out of there. And so anyways, it was a very interesting time in Elgin, but like I said, I was there for about a year, and we came back home. There's a lot more that else happened, but it's too personal to share publicly. But
it's all good. Yeah, but I've been to Elgin, Illinois a few times. Yeah, like AIH said here. He worked in Elgin for a few months. Yeah.
My mother worked at some type of clothing shop, sewing stuff, and my dad worked in construction. And I remember him driving me around, showing me where Al Capone stayed or something like that as a kid. But I'm really thankful for my time in Elgin because they actually let kids go to school at a younger age. So I ended up having a kind of a head start from an education standpoint by the time I came back.
Okay. All right. So now, how long have you lived in Louisiana?
Well, I was born here in 1983. And other than living in Elgin and living in, I lived in Arkansas for about 9 months and in Austin, Texas for a short stint one summer.
Well, you know me, I bounced around the country, many different places, all for work. And this was all before I had children. Probably every 2 or 3 years, I was living someplace that different, doing another job, either at the same company or another company. So I enjoy traveling because it gives you a different perspective on many different things. You know, as a child, I used to spend summers in Mississippi with my grandmother.
Oh, wow.
My brother and that's a 180 from Chicago.
Yeah, it is. It's a much slower pace, right?
Yeah, so you really start looking around. I mean, kids walking around with no shoes on, laughing at you because you do have shoes on. And the fruit at the grocery store, what some people thought was fun on a Friday, going to the park and swinging. There was a bunch of stuff that we never did in Chicago that we did when we went down. So, moving around the country, I would recommend it to anybody. Like you had this story from Elgin that sticks with you. Remember that because you don't see that every day where you are.
Yeah, and then traveling globally, I think it's actually important if you can do it. I understand why some people don't, but that has really impacted a lot of my views that I hold personally and dear. Once you get out of the country and get to be with people in a special way, to me that's important. I've been to South America, Africa, Paris, Central America, Guatemala, El Salvador, and then all around north the United States. And to me, it's important, and especially community building wise, like sports cards or Marvel cards or comic books. I think it's even more important.
And let's think about the people in the community, right? We can take this back to the community that you meet and what their backgrounds are and what they have done or what they aspire to do. And then the center theme is what we're collecting.
It really, it has a way of drawing you in really quick, right? Even though there may be a lot of different life experiences and so forth and so on, in all the different domains of life, we have this one thing that we have this common, value of and language of that like really knit you together pretty quickly.
Yes, sir. Well, I've appreciated this time today.
Well, thank you. I have too.
I've looked forward to this all week.
Man, I really, it's an honor to be here, and thank you for all of your viewers and comments. And somebody said I look like Alex Jones. I don't know who that is, but I do get.
AIH said you look like Alex Jones, but then Charles came back and said AIH looks like the little brother of Kumar.
I don't know what that means. Charles is my friend. Stacking Gems is who that is.
Oh, Charles is here on a regular basis. I appreciate him.
Yeah, he sent me a message. He said, "Hey, FD is cool. You're gonna enjoy yourself."
Oh, yeah, man,
And but I actually get that I look like Elon Musk all the time. And I just look at my wife and I say, "Hey, I look like the world's richest man, baby."
what did she say?
I'll tell you exactly what she says. She says, "Is he into blondes?" Because I'm married a blonde, and I said, "No, I think he's into emo dark-headed chicks." Last I looked, so you're out of luck.
Oh, you tell her I love that response.
Yeah,
Very cool.
She's beautiful and special.
Yeah. I know she's with you. Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
Sir, I really appreciate you, man. It's been
Yes.
good to have this conversation. I'll reach out to you again in the future just to say what's up, see how things are going. I'll plan to have you back on again, probably in a duration of time to talk more, because there's much more behind you that we haven't even gotten into today.
Right, and a lot more that's going to be happening, I suspect.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right.
Well, thank you for your time, Justin. I really appreciate you,
thank
sir.
you.
I wanted to ask you some real questions along the way, just about what your thoughts were on Marvel. I appreciate all your answers, because I just enjoy talking to people in the space, really active in the space. And I don't think anybody's thinking about Marvel cards that's in the space, and your name doesn't come up.
I keep hearing that. It's interesting because I'm just a guy in Louisiana, right? Like, really, I'm just a guy in Louisiana who hit record and hit record at a time that was pretty serendipitous as it relates to Marvel cards. And for me, it's just been me enjoying this passion of Marvel cards and being willing to put that on screen and then share it with others and then let it go from there. And some people have taken it away, to a place where maybe I'm not a huge fan of, in the sense of my connection to it. And then many, many more people have. And what happens from there. Like, it up and down, right or left, like, that's not for me. For me, it's just, I want to stay in this place of alignment with people that I'm connected to, and a place of enjoyment. Because for me, Marvel cards needs to live in the space of low stress. And for me, I don't want it to move into a space of high stress, because then it ceases to be what I want it to be for me.
Yes, sir.
And to me, that's my hobby, right? And that's the thing that I collect. And it does make some money on the side, and that's fun, but that's part of the hobby aspect. My job, I've got to make money. Like, that's what I'm committed to. I'm committed for me and my family, my employer. But for cards, it's not the same.
No, I completely understand. I can completely understand that standpoint. Justin, thank you very much, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
I appreciate you. And thank you all for being.
Yeah. Have a marvelous day.
That's right. Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.